Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm going to be doing a critique of one of the forum members over at the Sycra.net forums. Alright, so what we have here is a dragon, and what I'm going to do is I'll talk about this first and what you did well, what could be improved on, and then I'll do a time lapse of the process I used to do a paint over, and then maybe I'll go over the image at the end. But anyway, so you talked about being a self-educated beginner artist who wants to become a concept artist. And right now you don't have no idea about anatomy, perspective, composition, or colors, and you have no fundamentals, and you've not taken any art classes. Well, considering all that, I think you did a great job. And just looking at this image, I can tell you've got a future ahead of you. In concept art, if that's what you want to pursue. But there are some things that could be improved on, and I feel a bit hesitant to go over some of my concerns, I suppose, because a lot of it is personal taste. And this is why I don't really like making critique videos anymore, because I just get this feeling that what I'm talking about sometimes is more about me than, what the person actually needs. But when it comes to a lot of these things, you mentioned values, you mentioned colors, and composition, there's only so much it feels like that can be taught in terms of a lesson, and then the rest is about putting in the work yourself. And years and years of practice, which I think you will, once you get that, you will solve a lot of these problems yourself. But anyway, I'm just going to go over my take on this. So you mentioned also that his wings are supposed to be undersized, as you want to give him a bit of a caricature feeling. You're playing with the idea of putting a giant comical character in an epic landscape. Well, to me, he doesn't seem that comical, but I do think it's a neat idea. So, one thing I would do if I was you is maybe make the wings a bit smaller, because right now they look sort of in the middle. Of course, if it was supporting his body weight, the wings would probably need to be, really big. But right now it's not small enough to seem intentional. And I almost think of Hermes with his sandals, where he's got little wings on the ends, and it's ridiculous to assume that those are actually lifting him, and it gives it more of a comical feel. So something more, small might work better for the wings, because then it really can't lift him, so then you do get the sense of, okay, it's more whimsical. And I really like what you've done with these mountains. I love the trees here. They're a bit hard to see. I actually really like this whole pose in general. I like how you've got the hand wrapped around the bicep and the leg wrapped around here, and this going over, and then how the tail moves in 3 dimensions into the background, and you've got atmospheric perspective, you've got trees here as well, and this epic mountain range. So a lot of things you're doing really well, and it's these little details, having overlapping objects, having things move in 3 dimensions, even with this wing, how it's not just flat, you've got this coming forward. This is something a lot of beginners miss. So, that's great that you're doing that. Now, there are some anatomy problems. If you look here, you can see you've indicated a rib cage. And something to note is that most animals have, and humans as well, we have, especially mammals, but also reptiles and even birds, we have common anatomy. And you mentioned you don't know anything about anatomy, and it's something you might want to look up because of the fact that we have common anatomy. Things like rib cages and their attachment to limbs like shoulders, and how almost all animals have these shoulder blades and rib cage things, and so the rib cage probably could be here, and then the arm could be here. So that would, solve that. Right now it's just looking a bit odd, and you don't seem like the type, from what I read in the forum post, who would make this excuse, but there are people who will say, well, I'm doing a dragon, so anatomy doesn't matter. And these are the same people who might say, well, if you make the nose too big, well, that's my style. And it very well could be a style thing, but usually people can tell when something is intentional or when it is a style choice. And for this, it just seems like you could maybe take a look at some even horse anatomy or even giraffes, and see how the rib cage is and how the neck attaches to that. And then you've got some things going on here that are kind of, I don't know, a bit vague. For instance, you have some folding going on here where this goes in and then it comes that way, but maybe you would get some more wrinkles almost here. But anyway, this is something I know just from looking at what you're doing that you will figure out. And it's little things like, the three-dimensional wing that tell me that you're already on the right track. Now, about the story itself, again, I really like the mood, but I'm confused as to what's going on with the reflection. It seems, it's cool, and you've got a cool water effect going, but I don't get it. If the reflection perhaps was doing something different, if you had a different pose, or it was just more of a story, then I think it would benefit your image, because right now it's a bit confusing. Another thing is, the way you treated things like this coastline, how it's a wave, and I don't know if there's a symbolic meaning to this stuff, so there very well could be, and I could just be missing it. But it's a bit odd. Nature usually doesn't have, these type of even, smooth surfaces. You might want to break that up a bit more. But even if you did, right now your composition has this thing where you've divided it like this. You've got the water here, and then you've got some grass. You've got the mountains. And it's almost this absolutely symmetrical composition. There is a bit of variation in the height of the mountains, which is good. But even in the back, then you've got this straight mountain range, and it's all very geometric. I don't know if that is the best composition. It could be. If this was for a book cover and you had some text here and maybe the title here, I don't know, maybe that, it could work then. But just as it is, personally, I would go for something maybe a bit more interesting, a bit less symmetrical, and his position on the page could be varied a bit, so we really focus on him. So anyway, those are the things I have in mind when I'm going to be doing the paint over, is that, okay, let's see if we can break up some of the symmetry. There's a lot of atmosphere going on, but it's also hard to tell just how big this dragon is. I might want to add some scale elements. A common one is to put in a person, so you can see just how big the dragon is. But I don't think that would be suitable for your image and your mood. So there's got to be another way to figure out scale. So anyway, let's get on to the time lapse. Okay, so I'm just duplicating the image so I can work on it, and what I'm doing in the beginning is I just felt that the dragon wasn't standing out much from the background, and this is something you'll have to be careful of, is because if your values are too close, or your colors like the dragon and the mountain are both similar in that bluish tone, then it's easy to lose the silhouette of the main figure. Unless that was your intention and you were going for something mysterious. And here I'm just fixing some of the anatomy, so I just redlined it and then did a drawing to see where things would go. And I'm also adding a bit more dark because you would have some shadows, some occlusion shadows, and making sure the wing is small so that there's no doubt that this is some kind of fantasy creature that doesn't rely on its wings for flight. And as well as adding some darks, I also added some lights. And you'll see I go back and forth with that atmosphere quite a bit. And again, the reason is to make the figure pop off from the background. And I wasn't satisfied with the way you did the mountains just because they were so even, and I thought it might be more interesting to play around with the sky more, and that could sort of frame the dragon, especially the silhouette. And here I'm just adding some snow to the mountains, and I didn't use reference for this, so I'm making the mountains sort of what I'm used to seeing, which are Vancouver type mountains where I live, and so I'm sorry if those weren't the mountains you had in mind. I don't know, the mountains I guess you put remind me more of maybe like a Himalayan feel, and anyway, I probably should have used some reference, but anyway. So I also thought maybe the horns could be bigger just to make it more interesting for the silhouette. Anytime you have something different, like small wings or large horns, it's often a good idea to exaggerate that so you can make the wings smaller or the horns even larger. And I had some trouble with the water here. Now this is my bad because I didn't use reference, so I took this course in a schoolism course by Sam Nielsen on lighting, and I learned how to do water, but I forgot all that information. You can't really watch the courses after a while, so anyway, there what I did is I changed the scaling so that the dragon is not... first of all, it makes him bigger on the page, because after all, he is important. And when I look at your image, it doesn't... I mean, of course we see that the dragon's there, but I just felt like it could be a bit more interesting if it was cropped a bit differently. And I also made the coasts go around so the lake is contained. And this, again, it makes it a bit more interesting for the eye. And it's optional, you don't have to do this. The trees were added for scale, so this way we have a general idea of how big trees are. So, including elements like trees, and I think I added some birds as well. Doing that will really help to let us know how big this dragon is. And this is changing your idea quite a bit, but what I thought is that maybe he's meditating or something. This is why there could be the water, and that there's some kind of effect where the water is actually levitating out. I don't think this is executed well, but anyway, that was just my idea, and that maybe that's almost like a hand sign instead of just I don't know, just, oh, I'm thinking. And something that you want to get in is a good balance between dark and light. And if you notice, way in the foreground, it gets lighter, and then there's a dark tree. So it goes like light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. I try and have that in there, and I wanted to bump up the saturation as well. So that's something I did. Now I also flipped the image and I added a layer so I can check the values, and this is really important because if it's not working well in black and white, often that means you're losing some of the potential of what the color could have. And yeah, I just wanted to play around with more colors. Don't just keep it one dead color. And adding some of that blue and effects, and they're kind of gimmicks, but yeah. So here's a comparison of the two images, and for those of you who are interested, it was I sped up the video by 10 times, so it was 57 minutes, I think. Yeah, the video. And that stuff really doesn't matter too much, in my opinion. I just know, usually I get asked, how fast was it? So yeah, so this is a final, and you can see the big changes, things like the mountain silhouette being a bit more interesting than the one you had, which is just sort of a V. Again, if you're really going for this geometric look where you have this thing going on, then that's not bad. It's not like you have to change things. I'm just maybe giving you some other options of what to do. Yeah, adding these kind of color variations really helps as well. And if I was to work on this more, you could even take that further and add some lights in the forest in the background, maybe on the top of the trees, just to make things again a little more interesting. But I think for the most part, that's the main idea. And again, you're off to a good start. So just keep painting, and more importantly, keep drawing. Drawing is so much more important than anything else, and I can't stress that enough. If you can draw, then you will be able to paint. Even if it seems like, well, I can draw but I can't paint, chances are you still have some problems with drawing. You don't understand form, because when you do, then painting is just drawing with the addition of color. So, and you're playing a bit more with edges. But anyway, yeah, hope that helped, and thanks for watching.